Welcome back, friends and colleagues, to another GB Studio tutorial video. This one's going to be a good one because we're talking about the Game Boy Color art processes, right? We're going to go over number one, the basics, what we need to worry about, knowing that it's the Game Boy but with color added on, if you know that's how the Game Boy works or the Game Boy Color works. Two, we're talking about tile sets, how we need to make sure our tile sets will work in those conditions. 3, integrating it, so taking our tile set and making it work in GB Studio, making sure it's all working perfectly. And then number 4, learning from all that, iterating and growing. So let's get into it with the basics. So here I am again in the GB Studio documentation. I'll try and run through the absolute fundamentals of how we make backgrounds work in GB Studio. And you need to remember that backgrounds and sprites are different. Sprites are the animated things that move around the screen, while backgrounds are generally the image in the background that the camera moves around looking at. You can update specific tiles, but generally the background is static, right? And as I said in the beginning, this video will be more about color games, right? But I'll start by explaining how the Game Boy system really even works so that we can make sure that we're working with it, not against it. So first of all, the background images are split up into 8x8 pixel tiles, right? And these tiles you can imagine as the blocks you hit your head on in Mario, right? That's basically how the background is made up, of these blocks. They don't have to look like blocks, but they basically act like blocks. So each background is constructed by 8x8 pixel tiles, and each of these tiles is only using 4 colors. And if we were to talk about the original Game Boy, they're only using these 4 colors, right? Where it's black, dark green, light green, and white, and it makes the pea soup that we're all familiar with. So the Game Boy Color takes those original 4 green colors and switches them into any color we desire. There is a limit on how many different palettes we can use, but we can use multiple palettes, right? In GB Studio, you can have, I think, 8 different palettes in one scene. So you could paint the sea, the 4 shades of blue, have yellow sand, and green grass, right? All are using 3 different palettes, and you still have 5 left for other things, right? So if you think about the Game Boy Color being an upgraded version of the original Game Boy, it should make it easier to imagine how we're going to do this in GB Studio. So let's have a look at GB Studio as an example of what we're talking about here. We're in the sample game project, and if we click on this color palette on the left, it brings up our 8 palettes. So if I click on the scene here and zoom in, this is the sample town, we can see as I move my cursor around, we're highlighting different squares. These are the tiles. They're 8x8 pixels, and we can paint using the palettes at the top different colors onto what's already here. And you can probably see how this might get complicated if you wanted to set up specific things. For example, this pink, the grass, is a different shade of green, right? So you'd have to make sure that if you wanted some pink grass, you'd have to make sure that the white color is the same color as the white of the grass. Things like that add up to be quite complicated, although they might not seem it yet, but that's fine. So let's paint over what we just did there, paint it back to green. Right, this is me from the future quickly jumping in to say that this 8th palette here is the UI palette. So if you change this, it will change the color of the text pop-up, which is beautiful. And it means that you can use that color in your scenes, but just remember that if you are ever updating the color of your UI, that's where you do it, and it will affect all of the other places that you have obviously painted it into your scene if you do need to use that 8th palette. And so this is one way of doing it, right? Where we have a green image as the background. Let's go and look for it. If we go to images, there it is, it's Sample Town. And if we preview as monochrome, you can see this is the actual original image that was put into GB Studio. And this allows us to paint all the colors ourselves. However, that could be time consuming, right? And what I mean by that is that GB Studio also can automatically take in the colors of the image and convert it into the palettes that you saw there. And that would be the automatic palettes instead of the manual palettes, right? So before you even start working on your tile set and everything, you need to realize that there are actually two ways of approaching making your background images. So the first one would be to just draw it all in the green, in the black to white to green, or you can make each tile use its own 4 colors and have GB Studio automatically use the colors where it can. However, this can be quite confusing. And personally, I've been around since near the start of GB Studio, so I'm in the habit of making it in these 4 colors. But I completely see why having the automatic palettes will actually, really help you. So I think we've talked enough. What we need to do now is work on a tile set to show you guys how we might approach it. So I found this tile set that we want to use to make backgrounds, okay? However, no matter what tile set you find, you probably will have to edit it in some way because your game is unique. So we're going to have a look at it and we're going to see what we can do with it. So I've just opened up the tile set in my software of choice named GIMP, and you can use literally any software that you're most familiar with, right? That might be Photoshop, that also might be Aseprite. I believe that Aseprite is probably the most pixel art friendly, but I find GIMP here to just be, it's free and it's just as good. I know what I'm doing in it, so that helps. So what we're going to do to begin is we're going to help see this tile set like a Game Boy would see this tile set. And from this tile set, we can construct maps, right? That's the whole idea about tile sets, is that you break them up and then you create maps out of them. So I can go to my settings and press show grid and it will automatically put this grid on it. I can also configure the grid and we can talk about it. So I've put it to 8 by 8 pixels. I've put it to red, and this is because the Game Boy uses 8 by 8 pixels and the red contrasts the green, the black and the white quite well. You can obviously use whatever color works best for you. And now we can see this tile set, right? We can see that we have the paths here, little bushes, we have a pond, trees, and they're all generally using the light green as the background. And personally, I am not a fan of this because there is like a design choice that we can apply in GB Studio that will mean that we can walk behind items. So let's jump back into GB Studio and I'll show you what I mean. So we're in the painting color part of GB Studio right here, and we have an option with this exclamation mark at the top, and it's called priority, tile priority. And that basically means that the sprites can walk behind the background. And then you might think, well, why would I want that? And it's because visually, they only walk behind the colors that aren't white. The characters can still move through the colors that aren't white. So let's turn off this tree and I'll show you what I mean. With this new version of GB Studio, I'm using GB Studio 4.2. You can click run from here and check out my other videos on 4.2 to find out how to download that if you haven't got it already. It's just a pre-release right now. So I've just pressed run and we'll find out very shortly if we can run behind this tree. Lovely. So I've ran the game, and first of all, let's check out the other trees, right? If you see the collision back here on these trees down here, it's red. You can see that they shouldn't be you can't walk through them, right? You can go on these edges, but then you're standing on the edge of the tree. It's not perfect whatsoever. We don't like that. And here we see we have a solid trunk, and you can already see our head is starting to go under it, and we can go behind the tree. And you can also see that the white bits of the tree are actually holes through the tree. And we can use that to our advantage, or we can edit this tile set or this background image so that we don't have those white bits and we have just the lightest green, right? It's pretty cool. We have the ability to walk behind things. In this tile set I'm going to show you, I want to go behind the trees. So we can only do that because you continue to walk on top of the white color. So what I'm going to do is switch the white with the light green inside my software of choice. So first thing I'm going to do is make a new layer. I think I have to go back onto the previous layer in order to select the color of my choice. That's what this option does here. Select a color with the threshold of 0 because I know there's only one color of that, and that's all I want. And then I'm going to color pick the white. I'm going to go back onto that new and empty layer, make the size of my brush huge, and then paint down the white. And I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to do the opposite for the other color. I'll hide the one I just did. I have to go back to the original layer, select the path, which is white, and then select the color of the light green, go back to that new empty layer, and then paint down this white. The light green on top of the white. And then I can show the previous one, and bingo. We now have inverted it, so the background of these tiles, right? So that we can walk behind these items, these trees mainly, right? If we look at these ones in the top right, and this one here, and even the little bushes, right? Because of doing this, we'll be able to walk behind them. I think it's also important to point out that this technique of walking behind items only works on the Game Boy Color version of GB Studio. You can't do it in the non-color version of GB Studio, which is a bit of a shame, but it also makes sense, I guess. I'm now going to save this tile set and export it as a PNG. So now we have two ways of turning this tile set into backgrounds. Number one is keep using the software you're using right now, and just simply cut up these tiles and place them where you need to go in a new map. Or number two, use a software that automatically cuts up your tile set here and allows you to very quickly paint it down. And arguably I'd say you'd want to do it like that, because when you update the tile set, this base tile set, it has the power to automatically update the map as well. So I'm going to show you that way. If you were to spend hours and hours making maps and you realized you had one tile that was wrong, you'd have to find that single tile in every single map you've got. So let's go and have a look at Tiled is the software I want to use. So this is the free software I've been using for years and years now. I believe we even probably used it at university. And it's just a way of turning your tile sets into maps without having to cut and paste, and instead you can paint the tiles, which is absolutely beautiful. If you look at some of the screenshots here, they're even doing it with isometric style artworks and stuff, which is awesome, hexagons, but we're going to just be using the square orthogonal. So here we are in Tiled, and I believe that Sprite has this feature that I'm using Tiled for already built in, so feel free to use Sprite. And I might get Sprite soon, and when I do, I'll definitely make some tutorial videos on that. Right now, I'm just using free software. If you want to support me, then go check out my Patreon or maybe become a channel member on YouTube. So here in Tiled, what we're going to do is we're going to make a new project, and I've called this one Forest Map. And then I'm going to make a new tile set. First of all, I'm going to find the file, and here it is. It automatically gave the name Forest Tiles with Priority. I'll just keep it as that. And we want to make the tile width 8 by 8 pixels. We do not want any spacing. That's not how the Game Boy works. And then we can click Save As, put it in a smart place. Now looking at it, it looks strange, and I'm not sure why that would be. Right, I had some issues there for a minute, but I realized that the file that we'd saved from itch.io had some weird data in it that was forcing the colors to be the Game Boy colors, including the transparency color, which was that bright green. So I had to copy and paste it into a new document in GIMP, and then just re-exported it to where it is right now, and it automatically updated to be this one that we made earlier. And so now we have a tile set, right? We can also make terrain sets. So if I say add new mixed set and call it path, then we can make it so we have, let's try here, there we go, on the right, and we can go like this, and hopefully what will happen is we can paint down paths. The only problem I see with this is we don't have one for the like full path, not unless we decide it to be this one. Might be worth trying just to show you guys. Perfect. So I just painted on what I think should be all of the versions. It might not work how we imagine, because we haven't set it up with this in mind. We're just like using this guy's tile set and forcing it to work how we want. But the idea is that as we learn how this works, we can adapt our tile set to work better with the processes we are going down, right? This tile set, though, is a perfect start, and I can definitely still show you how I expect it to work. So let's save that, and now we can put a new map in. So it knows that the tiles should be 8 by 8, so let's set that here. So if we make a new map by going to File and then New Map, we can set our width and height, and the Game Boy screen is 20 by 18. So let's say we want it to be 4 screens wide, or 2 screens wide, sorry. Then we'd want 40 tiles, and we can arbitrarily just put it to the height of 40 tiles as well, and press OK. And now we can imagine that our character, let's put a preliminary little thing down, is this big, right? It's 2 tiles tall. So then if we make a new tile layer at the top right and call it grass, then we can start off by making all the grass. And what I'm going to do is make the fill tool and then put on the random, the dice ones on the right, and then boom, we have grass. And I realize that there's no white in this, which is a bit weird. We can also go back to the tile set and affect the random chance of these things. So what I'm actually going to do is go back to the tile set in GIMP and add a white to the floor. And hopefully what this will also show you is that when you update the tile set, it automatically updates in tiled. So if we export it to where we just exported it to, and then look back in tiled, it's already there. We've already got it because I exported it. So now what we can do is we can affect the probability of these things. So if we have oh, this looks like these are all grass. Okay. So first of all, I want the probability of this piece of grass to be very high. So I can either make this number extremely high, or I can make these numbers extremely low, right? So basically it would add up all of the probabilities of all of these, and then, you know, roll a dice of that size, and then whatever number comes out will be, you know, assigned correctly. So let's say that we want rocks to be, let's say 3. We want this piece of grass to be, I don't know, 2, and then this one we want to be 7. Like I want them more to be that. This one we can put this to like 3. And then this one looks a bit weird, but I still like it, so 1.5 maybe. And now if we go back into our map and like clear this away and try the random again, we can see how the random chance has affected it, right? So there is a lot more white than there is anything else, and I think I want more of that grass. You see, as I move it around, it's like it just continues to like put a random, you know, scattering of these things, which is really helpful. So I'm going to increase the grass of this to, let's see, 20. And then let's increase this one to 7. And I think I like the rocks, and the amount of rocks. So let's have a look at this now. Let's place one. That's pretty good. I like that a lot. And we can move the layer down to have the little signpost be on top to, that kind of signifies the scale of the player to us. And then on another layer, we can create some trees. And if we have a look at how he's done it, it's pretty good. So we just want to grab as much as we can here, turn off the random, and then place these trees. Like so. And then we want to take the bark from this other tree and place it in. There's also these kinds of trees. Might place one here and take the trunk from that. They're not really that kind of tree though, are they? But there we go. That's kind of like the fundamentals of this. We can place some stumps maybe. And there we go. Some bigger rocks. And the path, that's the one last thing we need to talk about, is using that path we created. So let's take that path, and you see I'm clicking on it here. We need to click on terrains at the top left, and then automatically it should be trying to paint down this path that we've clicked on here. So let's imagine we start here. So let's try and build this out. And like I said when I was making it, we need to make sure that like we've set up the terrain or like the tiles in the terrain to work for us rather than against us, as right now they aren't really set up perfectly for what we are trying to do. However, they still get the job done, right? Like this is step one, and then we can iterate on this and make it better. But yeah, let's do this. Bingo. So now we have a map. And there's not world boundaries, right? That might be something we want to do. So we might add trees all the way around it. But we don't have to do that. So what I'm going to do now is save this and export it and then add it to the sample project. Here we are back in GB Studio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new scene by pressing S. You can also press the plus. And I've got a new blank scene. And I'm going to pull on the forest test scene that I've saved into the file. GB Studio has an assets folder in the project, and then you just put it in the backgrounds folder. It should be a PNG or a JPEG. And so what we're going to do now is talk about colors, right? We're going to try and apply some colors to this. And although at the beginning I said that using the automatic palettes would be like a speedier way of doing it, it also means that we kind of might run into problems that we don't know how to manage yet because we haven't done it this way. And this way could be seen as the hard way, right? Depending on how much effort you put into the tile set in the beginning, right? Because right now, if I go over to the right here and on background palettes, if I click automatic, it puts it to the color that we exported it as from tiled, right? And if we jump back into GIMP here and change the color of the water, actually I don't have water in the scene, that's not a good example. But if we change the color of, let's say, the path to some kind of orange, then we should be able to see that update in the game. So what I have to do is export this over the top of my tile set that I used in tiled. And then in tiled, we see that it's updated to be the colors that we used in GIMP. And then we then have to export that and over the top of the image that we put into GB Studio. And then now in GB Studio, it's automatically updated to be these colors. However, you might see that it's not exactly the same color that we used in GIMP or that we saw in tiled. And that is because it's the GameBoy Color and GB Studio is automatically affecting the colors. And it's doing that because it's trying to show us what it would look like on the original Game Boy. But we might not want that. We might want to be building our game for Steam or for something else. And so I've turned off color correction. Then the colors are now displaying more like how we'd expect them to display based on the colors that we inputted into our image editing software in the beginning. This is a new feature for GB Studio 4.2.0, which is absolutely beautiful because it means that your games, you can control more what your games look like when they go on itch, for example. The biggest thing that comes to mind is the game I made called Office Combat. The colors in that game are very strange and cool, but the colors I put in originally aren't like that. They weren't like that. They were more normal. And it's the color correction that made them interesting. And I believe it was because those colors were very extreme. They were like bright orange, bright blue, and so that the way the Game Boy like takes the almost infinite colors that we can use on a display, right, and takes them into the 256 colors that it can use. It often has to make a strange choice, right, which is part of the fun and the limitations of the Game Boy Color, right? So my tip to you would be, if you're using bright colors, this matters a lot more. If you're using very dull colors, you might not even notice, which you might not notice with this. I'll try and put a side by side of this, and in reality, you might not really be able to tell the difference. But if you're thinking about taking the art of your game more seriously, then making sure the colors are the colors you expected in the beginning is probably an important part. So now what we want to do is do what we learned in the beginning and add the tile priority, right? So I'm going to use the magic wand tool as I do it so that it paints it on every single one. You see, as I do one tree, it does all of the others, which is exactly what we want. Let's do it on this tree too. And I guess we can try it on these rocks too. And this sign. We just have to make sure that we are aware of the player's height, because if the player is more than 2 tiles tall, then if they were to stand beneath this item, their head would go under the top of the sign, which is not what we want to see. This technique only works if you have the base of your item block the player from accessing the other tile prioritized bits. So this only works right now because we have the small player of 2 tiles tall. I realized what as well I was going to show you is we want to edit this palette, which is I think is a new thing in this version of GB Studio. Let's try it out. Palettes. So what I'm going to do is extract the palettes, and from extracting them, I just clicked on this and clicked extract palettes. I can now edit them. So this one's called Forest Scene 1 Palette 0. Let's go over to that. And you see I have 3 palettes here. What I'm going to do is take the white from this one and put it on the green of this one. Actually, what I should do is take the green of this one and put it on the white of this one first. So then we've kept the green. And I'll put the white on the green by just copy and pasting, and then take this green and put it on the white. Now that might be really complicated, but basically what I've done is inverted the whites and the green, just like the original tileset had. The only difference is we've also got a different color for the path, and we might say to ourselves, hey, that doesn't look right now. I want to make the path darker. So let's make it darker. And let's have a look at it now. Bingo, we now have a forest path. And if I click run from scene here, run scene from here, and give it a go, we should see we can walk behind the trees. We've updated the palettes based on the original tile set, right? And then we've extracted the tile sets and edited them to work with more how we want. So I hope you've learnt a bit here. Let's try it out though before we get ahead of ourselves. Bingo. And like we said in the beginning, the white is what we're walking on top of, right? But in this case, it's the green, that light green. So now it's the light green that we're on top of, we're behind. I hope that makes sense. And if we have a look on this one, bingo. So if we didn't want to see ourselves through the tree, we'd have to make sure that in the original tile set, it's that white isn't in the tree unless we want to see through it. And obviously we've swapped the colors here, so it's extra confusing. There's an extra layer of confusing. That's a good example with the little rock bit there. We can see through the rock, not ideal. So maybe to finish it off, I will go and make this rock not see-through, right? But the path works lovely. It's actually quite a nice tile set, isn't it? This pixel mech guy has given us. I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't got it already. But yeah, let's go edit that rock and then update it and show you how that changes it. So the rock is over here, and you can see that it is in fact using the white. And although we'll lose the highlight of these 2 pixels by doing this, it's not the end of the world. It really, like, that 2 pixel highlight, you have to like weigh up, right? Is it better that it has a 2 pixel highlight or that you can walk behind it? Arguably for the player, the feeling of walking behind it is really, really satisfying. And with the trees, you can imagine here as well, we'd fill in all these gaps. Let's try and speed it up. And maybe you don't want to fill in every single gap, but, you know, filling in some main ones. Cool. So again, what we do is export it over the top. We then jump back into tiled, and then inside tiled, you can see that it's already updated. It's already followed that thing we did. And we then have to export it again over the top of the scene in GB Studio. And now there's more white in the tree as expected, right? And if we press run from here again, we will see that we can walk behind the trees and they don't shine through. We can't see through them all the time. It's more clear that the grass is green, right? Let's give it a go. Walk behind. Bingo. So it's only the light green bits that we see through, which does include the trunk, unfortunately. And the rocks, bingo, we go behind the rocks. And actually the highlight is actually a more prominent part of it now because the background of it is that light green. Fantastic. I hope you found this video useful. So this video idea was actually suggested to me by a Patreon member by the name of Pigeonnaut. And if you want your ideas to be top of the list, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube and letting me know in the comments. The videos will be available to you a week before everyone else. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you learned a lot. If there's more that you want me to explore with this theme, let me know. I know it's been a while since I've made an art tutorial, so I feel like there is more to share. I kind of scratched the surface with the new things inside GB Studio 4. I hope you're able to see from this video that although we started with a tile set that was made in an older version of GB Studio, by understanding how GB Studio works and even experimenting as we went, we were able to learn and then fix what we had quite quickly in order to make what we actually wanted work, right? And it means now that if I was to start, I'd have a better jumping off point, right? And so should you. So I'll put my patrons up on the screen right now. Thank you so much, you guys. You guys are the absolute best. Remember to like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you want to see in the next video. I'm thinking I might start live streaming some game development. I keep talking about it. And hopefully, if the more I talk about it, let me know. And I'll try and make it happen. I've never done it before, so I'm a bit afraid. But that's the fun of it, right? I'll let you know, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.